Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health Minute number 10. Have you ever heard the phrase, there's no use crying over spilt milk? Essentially, what's done is done. It is what it is. Crying's not going to help. Is that the way that you feel about our circumstances surrounding COVID-19? We're home. We don't know when the end is really in sight. There's nothing we can do about it by crying. Or is there? Many years ago, my daughter came home from preschool, and one of our little guys was crying about something, and she was so sweet and innocent. She had these cute little blonde pigtails and this sweet little voice, and she looked at her brother who was crying and she said, "Suck it up, Buttercup." And we laughed, and eventually he laughed, and we asked her where she heard it, said that it's not the kindest thing to say, because we've always tried to not be judgmental about tears in our house. In many cultures, crying is considered a sign of weakness. And many men have grown up thinking that real men don't cry. In the old days, and we see this in movies quite frequently, if someone was going to have some kind of an operation or have a bone set or some kind of a painful procedure, they would give the person a stick to put in their mouth and bite down on a stick. Whatever the reasoning for this, whether it was to cut down on the noise or to have them focus on something else or prevent them from biting their tongue, they did it nonetheless. And I think that many of us have been going about the situation with COVID-19 as though we have a stick in our mouths. We're gritting our teeth, we're just clamping down and bearing it. We're not sharing our feelings with anyone else. We're certainly not crying out. Maybe we're doing that because we're afraid of being judged by someone else who might think that we're weak. Maybe we're not sharing our feelings because they might think that we're not coping. But here's the thing, I think that tears are a gift. This is something that many years ago my father said to me. I came to him because we were called to be Salvation Army officers, and someone that I loved and trusted told me that I wouldn't survive officership because I'm too emotional. And my father said, "Carolyn, your tears are a gift. Your tears make you real. Your tears will help you when you have to deliver difficult news. Your tears will help you when you have to confront something. They'll know that it's just as hard for you to confront them as it is for them to hear it." And indeed, as I've walked through life as an officer, I have shared tears with so many people who have suffered loss or who are just going through a difficult time, or those who are struggling with depression, and those that I have had to confront. And I have indeed been learning that my tears are a gift. Before I was born, my dad wrote a song entitled Lullaby, and one of the phrases, I hadn't thought of it really until recently, how applicable it is to me. It said, "Baby, who gave you eyes to see? Who gave you ears to hear? Who gave you tears to cry a lullaby? Baby, there is a God above who gave these things in love that we might give them again to him. Give them again to him. Back to him." I guess that's what I've tried to do. That's what I hope that you will do, is to share your tears with others if you can, so that God can use them to bring healing to yourself and to others. I wonder if Jesus believed the phrase, "real men don't cry." I don't think so. I don't think he believed that, because when Lazarus died, and he was Jesus' friend, the text tells us in John chapter 11, and it was the shortest verse in the Bible, it says Jesus wept. And when he wept, the onlookers didn't say, "Oh, wow, what a wimp he is." They said, wow, look how much he loved him. So his tears were an example of how much he loved, the depth of his love, and the depth of his sorrow. And later on Palm Sunday, as he approached Jerusalem, he looked at the city and he saw beyond what was right in front of him. He saw the future problems. He saw the people. He knew that the very people who were about to shout Hosanna and sing his praises were the very people who were going to shout for his crucifixion. And that realization cut him deeply. And he wept and he said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it's hidden from your eyes. So Jesus cried. He cried when he was sad and grieving. He cried when he was frustrated. He cried when he was overwhelmed. And Jesus is our role model. We're supposed to do what he does, say what he says. Does that apply to his crying? Are we supposed to cry like he cried? Hebrews 5 verse 7 says, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petition with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. During video number 1, I taught about the idea of thought trains and how our brain is the station and thoughts come into that station that we can't control. We can't control the random thoughts that arrive, but we do control whether we get on those trains or not. And so sometimes those trains that are sadness trains or discouragement trains or fear trains, sometimes we can wave as they go by and not get on them because we can focus on the present moment or we can distract ourselves with something else. But there are also those times when it's just too much, when we get on that train. But the important thing is to remember that you can get off and you can choose when to get off. And here's the thing. I think that when we're on that train of sadness or discouragement or whatever it is, that it's okay to cry. There's actually several benefits to crying, actual physical and psychological benefits to crying. First of all, it triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which is actually calming. Shedding emotional tears also produces oxytocin and endorphins, or releases oxytocin and endorphins, which help with physical pain and also which lift our mood. Crying has also been found helpful in aiding sleep. Just look at a baby who cries and then dozes off. And there's some preliminary research to suggest that crying actually releases some stress hormones so that we're carrying less stress and tension in our bodies. And lastly, crying can communicate to someone else, if you do it in front of them, that a little moral support would be helpful. Crying doesn't sound all that bad, now does it? If you're one of those people that has been gritting your teeth and bearing these weeks of isolation, I'd like to show you what that might look like using a styrofoam cup. We'll pretend that this cup is our life. And during the course of our lives, day to day, we have stresses that come into them. We have responsibilities. We have the expectations of ourselves, the expectations of other people. We have fears, responsibilities, and all of these things produce related emotions. And it fills and fills and fills and fills. And then sometimes what many of us do is we put a lid on it. We try not to let those emotions out. And we all know what happens when you try to put a lid on something, when tension is building up or pressure is building up underneath. Well, it's going to explode. Big mess all over the place. And generally, folks, it's never at a time that is opportune or perhaps socially appropriate when we lose it or have a meltdown or whatever phrase you want to give it. Sometimes we finally lose it when we're at work or talking to a boss Or maybe when we're trying to be strong for one of our children. Or maybe it's during a really simple time, like just trying to figure out what you're going to cook for dinner. And then we cry. There is a way to handle this, to handle the stresses of life and the related emotions without letting it build up until there's a disaster and our emotions are everywhere. And that is to poke holes in our cup to allow a slow release of those emotions and stresses. And so we can poke holes by praying. We can poke holes by sharing how we feel with other people. We can poke holes by exercising, going for a run, punching a pillow, that sort of thing. And we can punch holes in our cup by crying. And as we allow those times in our lives where we can let those emotions out and express ourselves or give them an outlet, we're not going to fill till we overflow. We're not going to lose it or have a meltdown at an inappropriate time. But maybe we could go into our rooms and have a little cry and come out feeling a whole lot better. There is no reward given out for the person who can manage to cope with COVID-19 and not cry. No one is going to congratulate us for getting through this entire time without tears. But we can be congratulated for persevering. We can be congratulated for looking after ourselves. We can be congratulated for seeking help when we need it. And so let's stop bottling up those emotions and trying to keep them under a lid. Let's let them out. Let's recognize crying for the gift that it is and use it for the benefits that it can give us, and allow these emotions to come out in a measured manner over time instead of all at once. I hope this video has been helpful to you, and that all of you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.